From Microbe TV, this is Office Hours for Wednesday, May 7, 2025. I should say 2025, not 20. It's a reversion to my state's accent. 2025. I'm Vincent Racaniello, and you're listening to the, well, no, you're not listening to the podcast. Welcome to your little viral corner of the internet where you can ask questions, you can chat about viruses, and sometimes other things too that just randomly occur. Tell us where you're from. We'll shout you out. Meanwhile, I will thank our moderators for tonight. Les is here from California. Steph SF is here from San Francisco. Vanity Nutrition is here from New York. Barb Mack is here from the UK. Thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate it. Keep things sensible. Tonight we have a few things for you. I'm going to summarize some recent findings. Some news. I shouldn't say findings. Recent news, of which there's no shortage of. You know, there's a lot of science news because this administration is trashing science and public health. But oh my gosh, if you go into politics, it's crazy. The Secretary of State says she will not swear to uphold the Constitution. Why do the Supreme Court Chief Justice is going to be sued? Ridiculous. See how far they can go to break something that was in great shape. All because a small bunch of racists and misogynists think that this country should be run by white men, basically. And I do not subscribe to that whatsoever. I don't care if you think I'm talking politics. This is my country. I was born here, and I don't like where it's headed. And so we have to fix it. And we will. All right, let's see who's here. Wayne is from Urbana. By the way, let's see what it is here. Very pleasant weather lately here in the New York metropolitan area. Currently 20 Celsius and partly cloudy. I can wear I wear these thermal turtlenecks all the time now. I got 5 pair for the week, and I can wear a wool jacket over it, just a jacket, not a coat, and I'm good. Okay, Wayne, Urbana, it's 23C. Hello, Questella in Ohio, and it's 23C outside and fine. Jamie is in UW-Madison, 17C and cool. Rainy, welcome. I forgot where you're from. Gallbladder 8 is 23 in Baton Rouge. And Dagfinn is in Norway. We're at 7C and 2 a.m. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it and we value your presence. Brian is in Montreal. We're at 14C. Will is in Changsha, 22C. Zhao Shang Hao, Laisi Zhangguo Changsha. Well, I tried, you know. I wish we could all just speak any language automatically. That would be so cool. I was once at a restaurant in Florence. Wonderful restaurant. I can't remember the name of it. But at the adjoining table, I don't know, there were 5 people, and each of them was speaking a different language. And they all understood each other, you know. Let's say English, German, French. I don't know what the other 2 were. Spanish, maybe Russian. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. Maybe Greek, I don't know. So if we could all speak automatically, if we had it wired in our heads to communicate in everyone's language, that would be so cool. I love hearing people speak in their native tongue. It's so beautiful. Well, I happen to know that John is from Minneapolis, but I don't know the temperature there. And Vanity is waitlisted at 2 medical schools and has an interview in 2 weeks. Very good. Go for it. You're going to get there. Congratulations. Rima is in Iowa, where it's 24C. Kang is in Chicago, 9C with a few clouds. A little cloudy there, a little cold there, and cool in Chicago. Steph SF is in San Francisco, where it's 58F. Oh, yeah, John points out the last lecture of the virology course. That's right. So Monday was the last lecture of my virology course, lecture number 25, therapeutic viruses. It's a kind of a nice way to round up the whole course with all that you've learned and now put it to good use to make viruses to help people. And we will do that as a mini lecture here. I'm trying to get through the last 10 or so lectures. We'll do that as a mini lecture. And then we'll do, over the summer, we'll do some specialty lectures that people have requested over the months. And yes, it is traditional in colleges that at the end of a course, at the end of a class, the whole course, the students applaud for the professor. They don't do it after every class. No, that's not necessary. At the end of the course, you express your satisfaction, and they gave me a nice round of applause. You can hear it on the recording. I'm always grateful for them applauding me. And Mark Martin is here, 16C in Tacoma. Wishing you all the best. With what? With the stream, Mark? Okay, thank you. We appreciate that. Appreciate it. And Barb Mack, it's 1 a.m. for her in the UK. So thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Of course, if you can't sleep, why not hit the live stream? Yeah, you can figure, if I just lie here, I'm going to fall asleep. Sometimes that works, but sometimes it takes a while and it's frustrating. Noir LeBlanc, if you don't know, that name means black the white. It's wonderful, isn't it? From New York. And we don't need to know the weather because it's probably the same as mine, 20C and cloudy. Yesterday was very interesting. It was very foggy in the evening. You couldn't see the tops of the building. I love when that happens. Helen is in Pittsburgh, where it's 20C and lovely. MN is in DC, outside DC, not too warm. John says it's 21C in Minneapolis. Lise is in Columbus. Welcome. Michael's in Mexico City, dry 29C, pretty warm there in Mexico City. Carol, our favorite nephrologist, is in Bakersfield, where it's 30C, quite warm. Yeah. Pete is in London, 14 to 15C. Visto is in Sydney, Australia. Good day, Prof, and all the viroids. Indeed. Indeed. Elizabeth is in West Virginia. Did I say Rima? I don't remember. Anyway, Rima's in Iowa. University of Iowa. Well, she's not there, but she works in Iowa. EHS Talent is in Eastern Pennsylvania. Peter S. is from Boulder, Colorado, 54F. Rainy. Okay, Rainy is from Raleigh. That's good. 73F. Remus says, microbe is like the United Nations, gathers all around science. That's a good way to put it. We do. And you know, these people that the administration have gotten to head different agencies and so forth, they don't know science. They consider themselves scientists, but they don't know what they're doing. They're totally ignorant. And we'll hear about one tonight. But they have contrarian views that have no basis in science. And that's why they were picked, because Trump thinks that a contrarian view is what is needed, no matter whether it's right or not. You know, I don't mind contrarian views, but they have to be supported by some evidence. And to say at the beginning of the pandemic, we should let it rip, is not supported by any evidence. So it's just a contrary view for the sake of being contrary. And they don't think about it, so they end up being seriously wrong. Malignant incompetence. Hello, Kip from San Francisco, where it's 14C. Good to see you. Maureen is in Northeast Ohio. It is a comfortable 60F. Zhu is in Austin, Texas. You got your single shot. You got your shingles shot last week, right? How did it go? I remember that. Logotic is in Chicago, where it's at 10C, excuse me. I said Changsha very well. Oh, you were born near there. Well, in I think it was 2023, I was planning a trip there to Changsha and also to Hangzhou. Visit a couple of universities, but I didn't go. Maybe one day, huh? Costa Khan is in Melbourne. You're welcome. My pleasure. Polka Dot Puppet 72 in Denison, Texas. Freezing. Right. Rima, merhaba, Vincent. I can do 4 or 5 languages. Excellent. That's great. What are they? English, Lebanese. What else? Truth or Dare from La Jolla. Lovely place. I've read there are earphones that do simultaneous translation. Yeah, I think so. But I haven't seen them. That would be good. You can always use your phone for it, right? There are phone apps that will listen and translate automatically and then speak back whatever you want to respond, right? It would be nice if it's in your head, though. Cheryl's from Santa Rosa, 64F. Vanity, thank you, Microbe TV. You helped a great deal. I don't know. I hope so. If we did, I'm very happy that we did. And I'm sure you'll get into one of those schools. Yeah. There are apps for phones to instantly translate. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but wouldn't it be cool if you could speak it? That means something in your head is wired to do it. But I know it's not happening. I got it. There are earphones with cat shapes, making it look like there are cats coming out from your ears. Will listened to number 25 and understood bits. Keep at it, Will. Just keep coming here as much as you can, and you'll get it eventually. It just takes time. Patricia's in Massachusetts. What do we got? 114 people, 47 likes. Please press the like button, folks. Helps attract people here where they should find some good science. Mike and Lori are in Seattle, 18C. It's an interesting question to Mark Martin. I don't know if he's still around. No, he's here. He answered it later. Are fewer cargo ships docking at Tacoma? Tracy is in Chapel Hill, where it's 20C. Lori. Oh, so this is Mike and Lori is near Puget Sound, which is this is where Mark Martin is. The University of Tacoma and Puget Sound. Cool. 2 people from the same area. Orcas. That's cool. Toto 2001 is in Cincinnati, where it's 21C. Rima says, Vincent, I'm concerned that some bully can come and take you because you're exposing misguidance and misscience. I appreciate your concern. I don't know that anyone would know who I am or what I look like, but I suspect we are not big enough to warrant anyone's attention, essentially, okay? But thank you. I appreciate it. I just go about my normal life. I don't do very much. I'm not out and about. I go to the incubator and I come back. So I keep a low profile, let's say. I haven't even been traveling that much. So I could come in. I'm going to start doing some traveling, but You could come into the country and they could grab me right there at customs. Ray's 11 is in Sacramento. 24C, light breeze. Okay, Rima speaks Lebanese, English, French, German, and some Bosnian. Bonjour! Comment allez-vous? Très bien, merci. I'm doing a dialogue that I remembered from French class. Oh my God, we had to memorize this stuff. That's how they taught it to us back then. And all these little ditties I remember. Oh, où est la something? Someone says, où est la? C'est tout droit. Tu y vas tout de suite. Can you imagine 5th grade? It's still in there. Some stuff is still in there that's hammered in over and over. C'est tout droit. It's straight ahead. Tu y vas tout de suite. I don't know. You can go there quickly. Something like that. Oh my gosh. All those little ditties. Okay, I'll stop. That's very cool, Reba. Okay, Mark Martin says he can't tell about the ships from his home. Well, Mark, we want you to go on an excursion. Go to the harbor and sit there for a day and count the number of ships, okay? Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, Patricia, last week I was asking about info regarding the HPV conference, but really Rich was saying HBV. Yes, I actually asked Rich, as I had promised you I would, and he immediately said, I said HBV, not P. Sorry about that. Pete says Macron and von der Leyen have launched a fund to attract U.S. scientists to Europe. Well, that certainly could be good. There are many American scientists, or I should say scientists working in America, who have ties elsewhere, and they may go back home. Or they may maintain 2 labs, have the best of both worlds in case, for when it changes and gets fixed. Because we're not going to exist this way forever. I'm convinced of it. We will not stand for it. Here's a nice comment from John to Mark. I enjoy Matters Microbial. It's always something to look forward to after office hours. Thank you so much. Yes, we put our confidence in Mark. I said, Mark, bring your podcast to Microbe TV. And there you go. The rest is history. Ubalubi from Little Rock, Arkansas, where it's humid and 70 F. Made sure to take my little walk around campus to get my vitamin D. Yeah. Nevitz forever. New York, beautiful day here. I learned from an Italian friend who can speak 5 languages that al fresco to Italians means in prison and not dining outside. Dining al fresco. Okay. Well, look, I grew up in an Italian family. I never heard of that. So maybe it varies. It doesn't matter. You know what helps attract people. Conversations from actual professionals with years of experience. Yeah, but there are a lot of people that don't want to listen to us. It's too long. Yeah, I can spend 3 hours watching a football game, but it's too long. That's because it's not entertaining to you. But you should listen. You should learn. I have little sympathy for people who say it's too long. It's not too long. You can listen to 10 minutes and then come back later. All right? There's no excuse. Zero excuse. Give me a country where people don't say it's too long, please. What country would that be? And I will go there. No, I'm not leaving the U.S., but I'm just saying it's very frustrating. Anyway, M.O., you're right. That should be true in principle. That's what we try to do on Microbe TV. We have professionals who have many years of experience and talk about their fields, and you can learn from them. And they know their fields, and they can really do a good job. Yeah? Patricia says it's a beautiful night in D.C. And Mark says, my money's on Vincent. He's plenty scrappy. You mean physically, right? I could also argue my way out of it. I'm infected with Ebola virus, and if you get anywhere near me, you're going to die a miserable death. Do you think they would even know what I'm talking about? Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Vanity writes, if you simply post malignant incompetence on social media, everyone knows what you're talking about. It's both cool that they know and sad that we're here. Yep. So David Gorski originally coined that, I think, on Science-Based Medicine blog. And then I repeated it here and also on Twitter. I've repeated it as often as I can say it. Apparently, RFK was heckled at some local restaurant in D.C. He should be heckled. He should be made to feel unwelcome because he's not welcome to screw up science and public health, to make it fit his hackneyed views. Well, look, this isn't that word. I'm not even sure it's in the right context. Let's look. Let's look it up in the dictionary. Hackneyed. A phrase lacking significance, being overused. Yeah, it doesn't really apply. His unsupported non-scientific views, his personal views of how things are. We don't want that. We're not interested. It's the only reason he's been appointed by Trump, because Trump wants contrarians. Unfortunately, the contrarians don't know anything, and they're not driven by science. So heckle them. Whenever you see them, heckle them. Fire EMS is in Atlanta, 60F. Privyet Veronika from Moscow, 5C, but all trees are blooming. Kind of cold. I hope the trees are okay. Peter S. says, Pete, you might like the channel. What's going on with shipping? Privyet. Yes, la plume de ma tante est sur le bureau de mon oncle. Le papier de mon oncle est sur le bureau de ma tante. That's it. La plume de ma tante est sur le bureau de mon oncle, on the desk of my uncle. Le papier de mon oncle est sur le bureau de ma tante. Bureau de ma tante. We had to kind of sing-song it. Oh my gosh. School French. Jeff is in Elgin, Illinois, 13C. Went to a Spike and Mike twisted cartoon showing in La Jolla in the 90s. Loved visiting it from San Diego, visiting a friend. Vista says, j'étudie, I put J apostrophe, j'étudie à l'école, mais je ne parle pas toujours. Yeah, it would be j'étudiais, or you could say it. So there's a past infinitive of étudier, or you could say j'ai étudié with the accent, because j'ai, I have studied, right? So you can do it two ways. Some words have their own built-in past participle. Yeah, I don't know much about languages, but I know something. Mark has to go cook dinner. Best wishes. Incidentally, I had 3 years of German and only remember how to talk about soccer, washing the car, and the location of the bathroom. The location of the bathroom is very important to know in many different languages, right? Oh my gosh. So cool. Enjoy your dinner, Mark. Thanks for coming. Ted says, I've been reading about latent virus reactivation on board long visits to ISS, and that viruses may survive on asteroids. Is NASA studying potential virus transmission on Mars if we get there? Yeah, everybody's got latent virus infections. There's all kinds of herpes viruses, right? And so you go out in space, you get stressed, you get UV light, and you get reactivated. Yeah. Yeah, viruses could survive. It could retain infectivity, I guess, anywhere, depending on where they've been raised, right? What pressures they've been put in under. I don't know what NASA is doing about viruses on Mars. Right, so we don't have any evidence from the studies that have been done that there's bacteria or any life that we know of. I mean, there's stuff that that is needed for life, but we don't have any evidence of life. And so what more can you do before you land there? You know, these rovers sample, but we're going to contaminate the place with our microbes as soon as we get there, right? Because we cannot be microbe free. We have a microbiome. So there you go. Very Nika says, as for things everyone remembers from English as a foreign language class, it sure is. London is the capital of Great Britain. You know, I remember one from geography. The principal export of, I think it was Bolivia, is tin. I don't know if it's Bolivia anymore, and I don't know if it's the principal export, but yeah. Patricia, Vincent, hope springs eternal. I'm more pessimistic. You cannot be pessimistic. You think Germany was pessimistic after the asshole took over that country? There was a la résistance in France, right? People fought and they won. Now, I'm not saying we have to fight a guerre here, a war, but you have to push. You have to push for election of different people to Congress. You have to push your representatives and senators to look at things that you're disagreeing with. And of course, the courts have to push too, back at all this crap that they're doing. They're just trying to find the soft spots, right? They're pushing all over to find the soft spots of democracy. And I think I'm not living in a dictatorship, okay? And I'm not going anywhere, so it's going to be fixed. Ray's 11 says, on the 15th, RFK Jr. has a hearing in front of the doctor who voted him into office. That would be Dr. Cassidy from Louisiana, who now surely regrets it, but will not do anything about it. Dr. Offit wrote an excellent letter that I wish everyone reads. Hopefully they will impeach him, but I doubt it. He should be impeached, along with many, many other members of this administration. But where is this letter found, Ray's 11? What should we search for? Hello, Aubrey. Good evening from Richmond, Virginia, 71F. Ron says, I can sort of read français un peu. Je peux léger français un peu, léger. Lire. Is it lire? Not léger, no. Je peux lire le français un peu. I think lire is to read. See, it's still up there, which is amazing. I also have a little bit of Italian up there, but not much. Patricia, everyone in DC look west. Spectacular sunset. Got no windows down here. Amos says you should do a brief bit on the prairie warts outbreak at Black Hills Regional Park in Montgomery County, Maryland. All right, we'll put that down. Prairie warts outbreak. You know, warts are caused by viruses, right? At Black Hills. Okay. Your wish is my command. Yes, we released 3 little interviews that Rich Condit did at the HBV meeting, hepatitis B virus meeting in Chicago last September with an HBV virologist, the head of the Hepatitis B Foundation, and another HBV virologist who actually has hepatitis B to talk about the perspective of being a researcher and a patient. Did a great job. Appreciate that. Can send Rich anywhere and he'll do a great job. Pete is going to Cyprus on Saturday. and we'll miss 2 office hours. I can read Greek signage. I don't understand much more than the numbers and a few basic words. A year of ancient Greek nearly 60 years ago. Yeah. Yeah. Joe Rogan fills 3 hours of time with crap, nonsense. Just crap. I don't know why people watch. It's crap. Kang wants to know, where will the center of gravity for scientific research be in a year? Not infectious diseases. I don't know actually if it is anyway now or just before the last 100 days, right? I mean, there's a lot done, but I think a lot of other diseases get a lot of attention, right? And I don't think those are going to be changed, like diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, right? All kinds of neurological problems. I don't think those are going to be minimized. So they may be the center of gravity, and we'll have no or very little virology and microbiology. That's what I think. But, it's hard to predict. Next year, huh? Ubalubi. My colleague is writing her PhD dissertation, knows French, and is absolutely flexing on us by including the original sources as part of her references cited. Yeah, it's good. Why not? There are often papers you can't get in English, and so you cite them in the native language, of course. Wayne says, Google says al fresco in contemporary Italian is less commonly used to describe eating outside. Italians more typically use phrases like fuori or all'aperto. Yeah, fuori is outside, all'aperto is in the open. No, hackneyed wasn't right, but it's a nice word, right? And it's a word you do not hear very often. Americans should use complicated words more often. You should do a word of the day and get their brains moving. Hello, Kathleen from the Jersey Shore. Nice to see you again. Art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. That is fabulous. Who said that, Nevitz? Do you know? I really like that. Right. Pat Campbell is in Nova Scotia where it's 14C. Welcome. Guide Monkeys says, so the James Webb Space Telescope detected dimethyl sulfate on K12-18b. Would there be similar possibility to detect the signs of an RNA world in our system or elsewhere? I think you could detect RNA, right? For sure. Nucleic acid has a signature. Mm-hmm. But, DMS this is an interesting observation because DMS on Earth is of microbial origin, right? And so, we don't know if it's the same on K218b. Maybe it's different, right? So you can't make any assumptions. John is in Southwest Florida. Welcome. Les says RFK Jr. got his job because he had a famous name and had a deal with Trump, a political quid pro quo. And you think the name really helped him? I think he sullied the name. I liked JFK. I liked RFK. Edward was a little sketchy. Maybe a lot sketchy. And RFK Jr. is just a monster, basically. Children are dying. People are dying of measles, and he's a monster. Very neat. The trees are fine. Surprisingly, last year we had snow on flesh blossoms, fresh, and they didn't even wilt or fall down. Everyone was surprised. Nevitz Gallia et est omnis divisa in partes tres. Something is divided in 3 parts, right? That's Gallia. I don't know what that is. Dagfin says, Je parlais comme un français quand j'habitais en France au fin des années, 90. 90. right? 4 times 20 plus 10. 90. Oh my gosh, I like remembering languages. If I went to France, I could be fluid in a month. Fluid. I could be fluent in a month. I like that, Dagfin. That's cool. Well, you lived in France in the 90s. That's cool. John said, oh, Champs-Élysées. That's right. Hat says, did you see John Oliver fact check RFK Jr. on his public comments of public health stats? JR is simply a compulsive liar and dangerous. I did not, and I've been meaning to see it, but I have not yet. Yes, he's a compulsive liar and dangerous, and he's already screwing things up, and it's going to get worse. That's the problem. And I just want to know, at what point will he be impeached when he's done enough damage? Spam, I didn't know that. Plume de ma tante. Yeah, la plume de ma tante est sur le bureau de mon oncle. Le papier de mon oncle est sur le bureau de ma tante. Bureau de ma tante. Can't get that last note. Yep. Okay, Dagfin, here we go. Au soleil ou sous la pluie, in the sun or in rain, à midi ou à minuit, at noon or at midnight, il y a tout ce que vous voulez aux Champs-Élysées. So I love that phrase. Il y a tout ce que. You don't say il y a tout ce que, right? You say il y a tout ce que vous voulez aux Champs-Élysées. There's everything you want on the Champs-Élysées. And Peter says, je suis un canard géant, a giant canard. Joe Dassin. Okay. Hey, you would say it's science or bust. Yeah. You just cannot exist. The world cannot exist without science, and they will find out how things screw up big time. Yep. Aubrey says, all of the French I know, I learned from a Cheech and Chong album. I'm sorry that we're not talking about viruses yet, but we will. Patricia says, I think this goes in stages, and we are at the end of a stage. We just have different views. I don't think the Democrats have enough, I'll just say oomph to put it all back together. You never know, Patricia. You have to be positive. Very Nika. Lasciatemi cantare. Volare. Oh, cantare. You know, there was a famous Italian song that Dean Martin used to sing. First thing Will learned in China is, where's the bathroom? Yep. Environmental calls her limp congressperson all the time Langworthy limbness. Yes, you should all do that. Express your views. It needs to be a deafening roar, folks. John says someone should do a docu-history in warfare and infectious diseases from the Renaissance to the present. You know, there probably is a book about it already. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Germany needed a whole country or other countries to put their country back together. Yeah, well, many countries were willing to help, right? Because if you have a broken country, well, bad countries could take it over, right? That was part of the worry. I mean, Stalin was no day at the beach. And if you just left broken Germany, you would have taken it all. Yeah, Lear. Thank you, Artemis. Lear. I for some reason, what's Leger? Lear's to read. Margot, just hearing updates on Facebook makes me feel they are trying to turn us into North Korea. It's so disturbing. I can't watch the regular news. The joke is that the leader of that country now says there's a leader crazier than I am. But I think Trump is emulating a mix of Putin and the guy in Hungary. I don't even want to remember his name. Just a jerk. Yeah, we damaged many German cities. Many needlessly, like Dresden, didn't have to be bombed to nothing at the end. But yeah, then we rebuilt them, right? How about we all revolt? The only way I know to revolt is with my mind. I am not going to pick up weapons, unfortunately. Dr. Angela from Montreal is a fluent French speaker. That's right. Probably Spanish as well as English, yeah. Sherry Cohen and Thomas too. Very good. Stefan, who's the other guy? I can't remember his name. Stefan something, who made a lot of money on an antiviral for Hep B and started a foundation which donates to various causes. It's really good. He supported the Hep B meeting, for example. It's great. Most beautiful language. I think Italian is a most beautiful language. I took a literature course once in college, a freshman year. It was very tough. It was by Professor Grossvogel. He was German, and he had this. We sat around a table. There were 20 of us, and we read literature in French. Oh my God, it was so hard. He said once, we're talking about nice language. He said, nobody would think German is nice except the German, and he was German, right? I remember that college, freshman in college, 1970, right? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Bellissima lingua e non troppo difficile. It's not too hard, yeah. Okay, Margot is in Phoenix, Metro 83F. Spamlet. Mark Thompson show interview with Paul Offit tomorrow afternoon. I recommended after he had one of RFK Jr.'s legal associates on shilling for him. Keep sharing links with Blue Sky users. It works. Vista says, I see in the news that the pertussis outbreak in Michigan Offit warned about is now happening. That's correct. Yep. Okay. The link to this that I asked you about is on Substack of Offit. Yeah. It is fun reading the anti-vax comments. They're such jerks. They're just pure jerks and idiots. They don't know anything. Nothing. And they think they know everything, and we know nothing. And yes, some people confront them, but I can't bear to read most of them. It's pathetic that humanity is so anti-science. And they think, when I was a kid, you knew when you didn't know anything. And then there were experts who knew stuff. And now it's all blurred. Oh, my gosh. Vista DMS of a few ppm also detected in asteroid samples. So some abiotic source somehow, maybe. Who knows what the source is? It's so kind of you to spend time with us. No, it's kind of you to spend time with me. I appreciate you being here. I love doing this, and I love chatting, and I'm, all this banter is great. I think it's really good. Gallia in tre part divisum est. The first phrase of Caesar's Bello Gallico. Okay, got it. Gaul. France. James Webb Space Telescope. RNA would have to be a spectral signature, light wavelengths. What happens when it points to Earth? Can it detect RNA? Well, doesn't RNA have a spectral signature? I thought. I don't know. Beyond my pay grade. Well, I think I answered your question, right? The Center of Scientific Research. The Center of Gravity, yeah. It's making me goggle with this French. No, I just saw a few words and I realized I could still pronounce them and understand them. It's cool. I can also look at Italian words and pronounce them. Yes, John Oliver Slade. Yeah, you go. And the video link is here. Thank you, Vanity Nutrition. RFK is with juniors, without a doubt, living off his family name, and he always says stuff like, when my dad was attorney general or when my uncle was president. It makes him look like a little boy. Okay. Oh, here's another one. Sur le pont d'Avignon, l'on y danse. Sur le pont d'Avignon, l'on y danse tout en ronde. Oh my gosh, I remember that. When men are pure, laws are useless. When men are corrupt, laws are broken. Benjamin Disraeli, thank you, EHS. Silvio Pina, hello, welcome. Viva la Scienza. Ciao from the Bolognese in Burbank. Spaghetti Bolognese. Thank you for your support of science communication. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Artemis says in Switzerland, 90 is 90, which is way more sensible than 90, if you ask me. But then I am biased because I grew up in Geneva. Yeah, it does make sense to have 90, right? But even, yeah, in Italian it's 90, right? 70, 80, 90, 100. 90 always tripped me up in French, but I really liked that I could remember it. 90. Oh, yes. Many books on warfare and diseases. Russian isn't easy, but on the plus side, only 3 tenses. None of those future in the past nonsense. Future in the past, yes. I know what you mean. Yeah, I've heard that it's the structure is easier to learn, right? But any language where you can't look at a word and figure out how to pronounce it is hard. Like, yeah, Cyrillic, right? Unless you learn the Cyrillic alphabet, or any Asian language, Chinese, Japanese, whatever, where you have characters, you have to learn that as well as the language. I think that's really hard. Yeah. Goodbye, Mo. You were encouraging, and it was good to be with you. Thanks. I joined a revolt with the Muppets and Big Bird leading. I'll be there, John. That's a good idea. That's a great idea. My professor said only Germans like German. I don't know. I didn't say that. I can see where it would be beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. How do you say, where's the bathroom in German? Please tell us, Veronica. I don't know. When I hear people speaking Russian, I think they're mad. You know, Hungarian. No. No. Italian is the most beautiful language. It seems more difficult than French, which I abandoned and focused on Spanish. So much easier. And a cool last name too, Grossvogel, Big Bird. Oh, he was the nastiest professor I ever had. Oh my God, was he tough. He made fun of everything. And if you got something wrong, he was very nasty. What a great first year experience to have, right? It was my first literature class, and oh boy. Les says General Washington's greatest tactic was inoculating troops for smallpox. The Brit troops died and could not be replaced. Now, this is a good point, because today, as you know, the military is inoculated against everything. And they show no signs of stopping that because vaccines work. And if any of these idiots running defense said, we're not going to vaccinate the troops anymore, the generals would have a fit. And so, yeah, and they get vaccinated against smallpox as well as everything else. Yep. Yeah. Thames, I actually figured it out. You didn't have to translate it. Viens à Montréal et on va t'apprendre le français. Come to Montreal and we will teach you. So this is an interesting construction, right? We have on va, one, we will va in the future teach you, and the T is me, the informal me, le français. Well, I'll be in Montreal for 5 days this summer. It's not long enough to speak French, but perhaps we can get together again. If we keep burning carbon and using finite resources like their infinite humanity won't have longer, of course, I'm not prognosticating. And they believe they have a right to be jerks, ignorant that it's protected by the Constitution. But they don't believe in upholding the Constitution, Nevitz. So You can't have it both ways. Sorry. What do you think of Vinay Prasad? Totally unsuitable. I'm going to comment on him. I have an article to talk with you about him. But another one of these contrarians who's wrong about everything. He's a cancer. He's an oncologist, and he did some good things in oncology. But then he got turned on to COVID, and he saw he could be famous, and he just made one stupid statement after another. Some of which I'm going to go over in industry, an article. But by the way, he is replacing Peter Marks, who was Amy's boss. So now Prasad will be Amy's boss. Well, you can say Prasad is good luck. I think we lost a real climate warrior in Dixon. Yep. Patricia says Dr. Prasad is an unmitigated punk. It's good. I usually don't use the word punk, but I think that's appropriate. He's a punk. Vista says, unfortunately, James Webb Space Telescope cannot be pointed to Earth. It would be burned out. And then Will says, point the telescope at the White House. Would it detect intelligence? Excellent. Okay, Dennis says, JWST is equipped with an infrared spectrometer, which can detect and identify RNA as well as most molecules. It's tough to do because it will see all molecules simultaneously, so it's an ensemble. Yeah, it's hard to do. Barb Trees, but you can call me Barbara, is Durham 22C. Elizabeth says, I think they do know that they're ignorant. I think they resent it, but aren't willing to learn. I think that's why they're so angry. They're little kids yelling at you with fingers in their eyes. From top to bottom, the press secretaries, the spokespersons, they all have an attitude. And it's just so embarrassing when they make excuses for things that have no foundation whatsoever. Infrared spec is commonly used to measure protein structure and RNA DNA in the lab. That's right. In Switzerland, we also have settante. Yeah, like Italian. I guess the P is silent, right? Truth or Dare says, before COVID, we lived part of each year in French Polynesia, so my French came back. Yeah. I could go to Italy and my Italian would go back. I can read Russian, but I don't understand it. I learned it in elementary school. John says Dr. Dan Wilson debunked the funk, has a good expose on Prasad, a couple of videos where he goes through troublesome claims. That's good to know, John. Very good to know. Silvio Pina, here's a subliminal message. Thumbs up for the rest of you watching. 1975. Yep. So 1900, of course, is 180, right? And 69, 65. 1900. Oh, 1965. 1900. Yep. You see, I've still got some problems. Aubrey says, a lack of fundamental scientific knowledge and critical thinking is what gives some people the idea I can do my own research. Yeah. But the thing is, when it's pointed out that they're wrong, and sometimes in a nice way, they get all defensive and back up, right? And they just say, you're wrong, not me, which is ridiculous, I can't handle that kind of behavior. Reyes wants to know if I'm reading any books currently. Just finished Voodoo Science by Dr. Robert Park, physicist, written in the 2000s. Kind of fun revisiting some of the technology coming out during my college years. No, I'm not reading any books right now. I'm reading, with the class, I was reading my lectures and a lot of papers for the podcasts, yeah. Wolfindig das Klo. I guess that's where's the bathroom. Thank you very much, Dagfin. Abdul Rahman, welcome. They had a 2-year study in NYU about language and models using electrodes. Non-phonetic alphabet people had more neurons lighting up. That's very cool. Kang asks, is there an immune response to phages, and could it amplify the immune response to the bacterial pathogen? Yes, there is an immune response when you inject, well, when you inject phages in people, not to our microbiome, as far as I know, because, the microbiome has a lot of phages associated with the bacteria. I don't believe that we make antibodies to them. I don't know how it would amplify the immune response to the bacteria, though. I don't know what the mechanism of that would be. Yeah. Mag, I think Welsh is lovely to hear. Yeah. Trying to learn it. Yeah, the name of Wales. I could never pronounce that, right? Okay. My divorce lawyer had a heavy German accent. So what's the significance of that? You'll never forget it, right? Yeah. Have you inquired into whether people on triple therapy for HIV are less likely to develop dementia? Might antivirals work the way shingles vaccines do? There has to be something in that paper where they suggested that, but it hasn't been done. No. Yeah, as far as I know, it's not been done. It's amazing. Oliver's comedy show is a great place to learn about an issue. Yes, it is. My father majored in German literature at Cornell and then graduate degree at Columbia and taught history. Il faut faire un tweet en français, non? We should do il faut. It's necessary. So I always like that construction. Il faut. It's necessary to do, make a tweet en français, no? I don't think all the others could. I don't think I could do a whole conversation in French. I knew phrases here and there. Yes, you could call it cette semaine dans la virologie. Yeah. Esta semana en virología. We did one in Mexico, and we called it This Week in Virology in Spanish. Esta semana en virología. Yes, indeed. Wo ist die Toilette? Guess Dagfin had his version. Elizabeth said the problem is they believe they have rights, but no one else does, especially if they're women, black, trans, or were born in another country. Hypocrites. Yes, totally. And they're not right. And just because they got a slight majority in the popular vote doesn't mean anything. A lot of people didn't vote, and a lot of people voted against them. It's just the electoral college that makes everything seem so skewed. It's a stupid thing, and we should get rid of it. And then make D.C. another state and Puerto Rico, and they'll be democratic, and that'll be the end of this crap. But, they're never going to be made states with these MAGAs in power. You have to have an attitude and be as aggressive as possible in presenting alternative facts. Yeah, and you have to be aggressive in countering them. I mean, you really do. It's not easy. In the age of bullies, they know they can get away with it. It is the age of bullies. That's what it's all about. Laughing at disabled people, right? Making fun of disabled people. That's what the president did. And nobody seems to care about that. So that means that half of the U.S. population will laugh at disabled people. What's with you people? That's one thing that would disqualify him, in my opinion. Oh, my God. 1975. 1965. Yeah, meal. That's right. Another beautiful language is Gaelic, and of course the Scottish accent in English is the superior accent. It's very good. It's just Sean Connery, right? Margot, does the U.S. seem as crazy to those of you in other countries as it does to us? Some of you people living elsewhere, tell us what do you think of the U.S. But of course, here, if you're here, you know that we're okay, and that many people are like us. Noir says, "Je m'appelle, je am apostrophe a p e l l e Petrie. Je m'appelle Petrie." Why does the media in the U.S. not challenge the lies? Well, some of the media do, right? But the most listened to media in the U.S. is Fox News. And they just are full of lies. They don't even talk about a measles outbreak. Hence, most Republicans don't know there's a measles outbreak. And that's a shame. This is a crime, actually. The New York Times regularly criticizes and points out lies. But they're mostly read by liberals. Conservatives don't read it. Trump calls it the failing New York Times. What an ass. What an ass. Bullies. This all began with Reagan's rugged individualism, which was just another way to say selfish. I can do my own research. No, you can't, right? You can't do your own research. You need a lot of training to be able to do it. Okay. Do you think they will pull the COVID vaccine this year? If they pull, will it have an effect on the infection rate? No, we're not. No, it's going to have an effect on severe disease. More people will have severe disease and more elderly people will die. Yeah. Yeah, here we go. Cymru. So you look at this, Cymru, Cymru. You'd have to know it. You're not going to get that out of it, right? You can look at French and Italian and figure out most, not everything, but most of the pronunciation. But this, Cymru, I didn't even remember it. Dagfin wants to know how to pronounce the name of this Welsh village. And Barb Max says very carefully. You won. You beat the bacteria, right, Lamar? Good for you. We're really happy about that. Deine Hochzeit ist kaputt. What's a Hochzeit? I don't know what that is. I just learned from the American Medical Association that shingles vaccine can also lead to reduced heart disease as well as reduced risks of dementia. Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting. John says, Pfizer vaccine gave me 6 days of palpitations and COVID gave me dangerous palpitations. Is there a new vaccine I can get? No, not in the U.S. We have mRNA vaccines, which you got Pfizer, and then Novavax, which doesn't seem like it's going to be available anymore. So not here in the U.S., you don't have any options. Jude says, my shingles vaccine went easily, unlike my reaction to COVID. Why does one react differently to different vaccines? Different components in the vaccines, and everybody can react differently to them because everybody's genetically different, right? In Spanish, pronounced virología, right? I said Gia, that's not right. Virología, and I think in the episode I said it right. If we could add Canada, the GOP will never win again. Yeah, no, that would be the end of the GOP. So Trump is really dumb to suggest making Canada a state because the Republicans would be finished. Canada would never. Well, who knows, But I would say they're not going to elect the Republicans, the idiot MAGAs. Nope. Okay. Try Novavax could cause me to die. So I don't know what that means. I don't know what your question is. All right, it's 9 o'clock. Dove il bagno, that's good. Where's the bath? Bagno is bathroom or is it toilet? I'm not sure how it translates. Bath. No, bagno is bath. Où est la toilette, right, in French? Dove il bagno? Dove il parcheggiato? Dove il ristorante? Dove la pape? Why can't we be as smart as Canadian and Australian voters? Well, some of us are, right? 47 million of us are. Yeah. Making fun of disabled people is cruel, simply cruel. Totally narb, and Trump did it and nobody cared. As I said, for me, that would have been a no vote. You make fun of disabled people, you're going to do all kinds of other nasty things. And nobody calls them out. And all these people working for him are guilty by association. There's a new shingles vaccine study with the latest shingles. Yeah, so Shingrix has a good effect on dementia as well. Yeah. Okay. Let's do a mini lecture here. We're going to stop. I'll put a star there so I remember where to come back. Today we're going to talk about, and I'm going to remember to share the screen. I didn't do that for a while last time. Let's hide this thing until later. Or until never, forever. Here we go. Vaccines. I think we need to talk about vaccines. This is part 1 because it's too long. Étoile. Is that steeple? Okay, vaccines. They're our best defense against viruses. This is a fact. We have gone over this in TWIV many times. The last episode of TWIV, we had an article that was predicting how many cases of measles and polio and diphtheria, etc., there would be. And they went through the numbers of how many deaths have been prevented by vaccination. In fact, it has extended our lives along with other public health measures. So here's life expectancy from 1900 to just past 2000. And you can see it's steadily increased from about 50 to 75, 80. And this is vaccines, medicines, public health measures. The understanding that infectious diseases cause illness and death, and also there are other diseases that we can treat to some extent. And vaccination, of course, uses your immune system to prevent disease, not infection. It prevents disease, and it has memory. This is a very interesting graph that I pulled up during the pandemic. This is 1980 to 2020 life expectancy. So it's a little more recent than the previous graph. And you can see that it dropped about a year and a half in 2020 as a consequence of the pandemic. Now, what I find very interesting here is that not unexpectedly, the Black life expectancy is lower than others. White population is here in the middle. And look, at Latino is even higher. This I did not know. It's higher than anyone else. And I don't know why that would be. Nevertheless, everyone suffered this decline because of COVID. So how vaccines work, they stimulate a protective immune response, right? They have, yes, the biggest effect of vaccines is adults. You get and this could be vaccination or infection. You get your first infection, and then after some weeks, 2 weeks-ish, you have antibodies and T cells being made, and we talked about how they are made. Their numbers then decline. That's normal. They always go down. Antibodies and T cells always go down after infection or vaccination. There's no exception. And if you think a vaccine is defective because of that, you don't know what you're talking about. Go read some immunology textbook, okay? And the problem is that the people who don't know this are spewing this information into the media, who then amplify it. So then you have memory during this time of low antibody and T cells. You have cells that can remember to make those specific antibodies and T cells. So if then you're reinfected some years later, first you'll have a very rapid production of antibodies and T cells, none of this 2-week stuff, and you'll have a mild disease. You will be infected. because it takes a couple of days for the memory cells to get going. In the meantime, the virus is entering cells and it's reproducing. You cannot prevent infection using memory. It just doesn't work. And again, people who say otherwise, we're going to make a sterilizing COVID vaccine. You can't. The basic biology of the immune system tells you you can't do it. Anyway, this is immunological memory, which we talked about before. Vaccines stimulate that. First vaccines. Well, in China in the 11th century, variolation was practiced. What is that? People who got smallpox, the ones who survived never got it again. People didn't know what caused smallpox, but they noticed this and they said, well, what if we give people smallpox? Then they won't get it again. So this was called variolation. They would take a bit of the scabs from patients and grind them up and put them in people. Now, many of them died. 20 to 30% of them died. Not a good safety profile, but many of them lived. And this practice actually spread throughout the world. Now, Jenner made his first smallpox vaccine in 1796. In 1885, Pasteur made the rabies vaccine, and he introduced the term vaccination from vacca, Latin for cow, in honor of Jenner, because he had used cowpox virus. 1930s, we saw yellow fever and influenza vaccine. So vaccine development is slow and doesn't get going until after the 30s. The smallpox vaccine, by the way, is delivered in this bifurcated needle where you have a drop of vaccine virus there and it's scraped into the skin, which inoculates the virus and also causes inflammation, which makes a better immune response. Now, even when Jenner's vaccine was released, what is this? 1796, it got to be very popular. All of us, we had anti-vaxxers emerging. So this is the cowpox, the wonderful effects of the new inoculation by the Anti-Vaccine Society. So this was published later because vaccine wasn't coined until 1885 by Pasteur. But here we have Edward Jenner, inoculating people. And then these people who have been inoculating have features of cows because they said that's what's going to happen to you. And of course, it never happened. But people don't read, very hard to read back then, and they believe the naysayers. We've learned that large-scale vaccination campaigns can be very successful. Yeah, Jenner called vaccination variolation. Well, actually, it was called variolation much earlier. Or maybe not. Maybe it was Jenner. I don't know. Large-scale vaccination campaigns can be successful. We know that polio has been eliminated from many countries. Poliomyelitis has been eliminated. Here's the U.S. experience. Measles was eliminated by 2000 in the U.S. And unfortunately, it's coming back now. And we have saved many lives by measles vaccination. So this purple line would be the estimated measles deaths in the absence of vaccination. And the red line is actual measles deaths with vaccination. So this is obviously decreasing the number of deaths caused by measles infection, not by vaccination. So these are the lives that have been saved, many, many millions of lives. There's no question about this. This is all fact, folks. And the naysayers, RFK Jr. and his ilk, like to say vaccines don't work, but that's a lie. Of course they work. They like to say they have horrible side effects. That's a lie. There are none. There are minor side effects. Some vaccines, Sabin polio vaccines can paralyze you. That's a major side effect. We've always admitted that. Measles vaccine, no. Sorry, RFK Jr., you're wrong, and you are lying. Vaccines are part of our existence now. Globally, we immunize everybody. We even immunize our pets and wild animals. And many childhood diseases are therefore rare. We even immunize fish on fish farms. They're a major part of Western nation's public health measures, but not in low and middle income countries. And that is why we still have a lot of rubella and measles in many countries. And of course, I want to talk a little bit about vaccine hesitancy in the anti-vax movement. These are things that people say why they don't get vaccinated. You've seen all these. Viral diseases are a thing of the past. Well, measles was in the U.S. and many people stopped vaccinating, and now it's coming back. That's an interesting experiment, isn't it? Herd immunity has not been proven to work. I've heard that a lot. I never get the flu. Measles is a trivial kid's disease. I made this slide a long time ago, before RFK Jr. said it. Kids should get infected naturally. Oh, yeah, really? And have hundreds and thousands of deaths every year? I'm not injecting anything into my body. Okay. What about drug use? What about that? And you're eating stuff. You're putting stuff in your body as well. They cause autism. I don't have time. Anyway, when these attitudes prevail, you have problems with large-scale vaccination programs, and you lose confidence in vaccination. And so the ability to vaccinate is a combination of confidence in the effectiveness of vaccines, complacency, we don't have to vaccinate against these diseases, and convenience. I don't have time this year, and so the intersection is the ability to vaccinate your population. Now, in some cases, medical exemptions to vaccinations are indicated. Some people have medical issues that prevent them from being safely vaccinated. This should not exceed 1% of the population, but they usually do, as they are inappropriately given. So there are religious and personal exemptions, which have been canceled in many states, but not all. Medical exemptions are up to the doctor, of course. And in many places, doctors will give out a medical exemption if you ask for it without asking questions. In some counties in Texas, the rate of medical exemptions approaches 40%. So this is wrong. If you take a Hippocratic oath to do no harm to people, you should follow it. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And of course, vaccine programs depend on public acceptance of their value. And here's a map showing outbreaks of measles in recent years. It doesn't include the West Texas outbreak, either in religious communities or not. And these yellow states are the ones that had measles outbreaks. And the red are cases tied to unvaccinated members of religious communities. Now, we know in the current outbreak in Texas, which is shown on this epigraph, right? These are cases of measles from 23 to March 2025. You can see the numbers are increasing and increasing as fewer parents are getting their kids vaccinated. The West Texas outbreak is in a Mennonite community, which is under-vaccinated. They homeschool and therefore get out of the school requirement for vaccination. But some of these other outbreaks, there was an outbreak in Brooklyn, New York, a number of years ago, and unvaccinated members of an Orthodox Jewish community, the rabbi said, you shouldn't get vaccinated. It's dangerous. Hare Krishna community in North Carolina, the leader said, don't get vaccinated. The pastor of a church in Newark, Texas, was critical of measles vaccination. Show me, pastor, where is your degree in public health or epidemiology or virology? What do you know about vaccination? Nothing. You just know what some anti-vax person has told you. And that is not appropriate to tell your congregation. Anyway, lots of cases like that. And of course, there are also outbreaks not tied to religious communities, but religious communities are susceptible because people listen to their leaders. Then we have the misinformation business. I made this slide last year before RFK Jr., and it's about Joe Mercola, a physician in Florida who has the most popular alternative health website in the world. He makes a ton of money with selling dietary supplements. Early in the COVID crisis. So they wrote this during COVID. Mercola promoted his website, Stop COVID Cold. He offered hydrogen peroxide and quercetin as treatments for COVID, neither of which had been proven to work. I don't know where he thinks that the information is saying that they work, but they don't and they didn't. But he wants to make money selling them. He claims that COVID vaccines were a medical fraud because they don't prevent infections. As I've told you, no vaccine prevents infections. Just being an idiot. They don't provide immunity and they don't stop spread of disease. Well, that's all wrong. They're all lies and misinformation. He said the COVID vaccine, meaning the mRNA vaccines, alters your genetic coding, turning you into a viral protein factory that has no off switch. I think all of you here realize that this is all misinformation and lies. The mRNA vaccines do not integrate in your DNA, making viral proteins incessantly. That's just a lie. But he's depending on people not knowing and not listening. It sounds really bad. And he's a doctor. Boom. There you have it. So this year I added this slide. RFK Jr., the head of HHS, who believes in miasma, not infectious agents. He thinks vaccines cause autism. He has claimed that no vaccine is safe and effective. He claims that measles vaccine kills people, causes deafness and blindness, and actually causes measles. He claims that the polio vaccine has killed more people than it saved, and claims the COVID vaccine was the deadliest ever made. Each of these is a lie. It's all misinformation. He doesn't know what he is talking about, and he is head of Health and Human Services. This is a travesty. Now, the Texas measles outbreak began last October in the Mennonite community. The first death in February was the first in 20 years in this country due to measles. RFK Jr. said, it's no big deal. We have measles every year, fitting in insensitivity with the president of the U.S. He did not advocate vaccines. He said it's a personal decision. Instead, he said, take vitamin A and cod liver oil. And then multiple children were hospitalized for liver damage. Now we have 3 deaths because of this outbreak. What he should be doing is having a press conference every week telling us what he's doing to stop this outbreak, how he's sending vaccines to these states and people who can deliver the vaccines. But no, he's not doing that. And so the outbreak continues. And of course, it's spread to other states as well. So this is what we're up against with respect to vaccines, folks. Finally, one nice statement, which I've shown you before, from Robert McNeil, who used to write for the New York Times. Vaccination is not a personal decision. He wrote that RFK Jr. needs to stop saying it's a personal choice. They're not. Speed limits are not a personal choice. Paying taxes isn't a personal choice. Sacrifices are what make us a nation instead of 340 million selfish hunter-gatherers. Each of us gives up some personal freedom so we all stay alive. I think this is the best argument against RFK Jr. saying it's a personal choice. You have to give up some of these choices if everyone's going to be safe. Okay, now the science of vaccinology. Vaccines can be active or they can be passive. An active vaccine is giving a modified form of the pathogen or something derived from it that induces immunity to disease. And this gives you memory. It gives you long-term protection. A passive vaccine, you give the products of the immune response to the recipient. It's mostly antibodies, but in theory, it could be immune cells. This is short-term protection. For example, here's a bottle of rabies immune globulin. That's actually a picture. Ce n'est pas une bouteille de rabies vaccine, right? Ce n'est pas un pipe. It's a picture of a bottle of rabies vaccine. Famous painting, right? This gives short-term protection. Rabies antibodies are injected. If you get bitten by a dog or a rabid animal, they inject these into you, these antibodies, to help neutralize some of the virus, and then they immunize you. Magritte, ce n'est pas un pipe. Of course, everyone gets a natural passive vaccine at birth from your mother. Your mother's complement of antibodies are passively transferred to the fetus during development. So here's conception and birth 9 months later. So during this time, antibodies from the mother, IgG, are transferred to the baby. At birth, you have the maximum amount, and then they slowly decline. By about 6 months, they're no longer there. But then the baby's immune system starts to ramp up, and then it can handle it on its own. So what you get from your mom is a natural passive vaccine. Yes, it is a vaccine. That's the term for it. It's a passive vaccine. And we have lots of great examples of passive immunotherapy. My favorite is the one involving Jordi Casals, who was a virologist at Yale. He was studying Lassa virus, which had emerged in Nigeria in 1969. He infected himself. He lived in Upper Manhattan. They hospitalized him at Columbia University Medical Center. And it so happens that a nurse from Nigeria who had gotten sick earlier in the outbreak had been flown there and treated, and they saved some of her blood, which they then give to Jordi. And while he lived, don't know if the serum did it or the plasma, but he lived. And of course, during COVID, we used convalescent plasma and monoclonal antibodies for either treatment or prevention. So treatment, you would get the infusion after you were infected, or prevention, you would get it before, of course. So for plasma, we would take people who have recovered from COVID, take their blood, and separate out the plasma. That's the liquid remaining after the cells are removed, and you prevent clotting with an anticoagulant. And then you give it to people prophylactically or therapeutically. And then, of course, we made monoclonal antibodies to the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2, and these were used to treat people as well. Remember these? Bamlanivimab, Bamban. All these are no longer used because variants arose that had amino acid changes in the spike that made it resistant to neutralization with these monoclonal antibodies. So what are the requirements for an effective vaccine? Well, first of all, you need to make an appropriate immune response. That is either Th1 or Th2. Th1 is favoring the production of cytotoxic T cells, which will kill virus-infected cells. And Th2 favors antibody production. So you have to have the right response. But most importantly, the individual has to be protected against disease. It's not enough to get a response. It's not enough to produce antibodies after immunization. You have to show that those antibodies and whatever else you're not measuring, like T cells or NK cells, are protecting against disease. Furthermore, the vaccine has to be safe. It can't cause disease. It can't have side effects. It has to induce protective immunity in the population, and it should be long-lasting and be cheap. WHO wants vaccines to cost less than $1. The vaccines should be genetically stable. They should not revert. They shouldn't have to be frozen, although most vaccines now have to be frozen. And here's some shipping containers that have been developed to do that. And the delivery, most vaccines are given by needle and just a few are oral. And it would be nice to have alternative delivery methods where you don't need a trained healthcare worker to do that. And I think a lot of parents don't like to have their kids stuck with a needle. And so if we could get around that, I think it would help uptake. So we're going to, for the rest of today, just going to finish up after talking about 2 different vaccines, and then we'll continue next time. We'll talk about all the different kinds of vaccines and how you make them. So here's an overview. So we start with the parent virus that's virulent. You want to make a vaccine against it. You have different ways that you can do that. You can attenuate the virus. In other words, you can modify it in some way so it doesn't cause disease, but it still replicates and induces immunity. So we call that attenuation. You can do inactivation. You can inactivate the infectivity with various chemicals and inject it, and you have antigenicity. You can fractionate the virus and make subunit vaccines, purified. And then the more modern way, you can use cloning. You can take the gene, the appropriate gene from the virus, and express it in some cell and either get proteins or sometimes virus-like particles assembling on their own without nucleic acid. You can make vectors like Chadox, chimpanzee adenovirus vaccine carrying the spike gene of SARS-CoV-2. And you can make DNA or mRNA vaccines as well. The mRNA vaccines, of course, were brand new during COVID, used for the first time, and are a new class of vaccine. These are the vaccines that are licensed in the United States. So we have the virus or the disease here on the left, the kind of vaccine it is, where it would be used, and the dosing schedule. So, for example, some vaccines are not used for everyone. Adenoviruses are only given to military recruits. It's an attenuated oral vaccine. Hepatitis A, again, only for travelers. It's an inactivated whole virus vaccine. You'd need 3 doses. But other vaccines, there are a number of travel-related vaccines here. Yellow fever, Japanese encephalitis. But many vaccines are given to children, like hepatitis B virus, which is a recombinant protein made in yeast, and every child gets it, 4 doses to prevent getting chronic hepatitis. And of course, measles and mumps, papillomaviruses. This should now be males and females up to 45 years of age, males 11 to 21, but it's now been extended to 45 years of age. And polio and others, of course. So we also have Ebola virus vaccines, the mRNA vaccines. And we used to have Novavax, but that's no longer available in the U.S. So let's talk about inactivated vaccines, and then we'll stop. Here you take the infectious virus and you treat it with a chemical to inactivate its ability to infect cells, but it can still give rise to an immune response. And the chemicals include formalin, propiolactone, some detergents. You get rid of infectivity, but you don't compromise infectivity. So the polio vaccine, inactivated polio vaccine, is a good example of that. A little bit about the disease first. Poliomyelitis is made up of Greek and Latin roots, polio, gray, myelon, marrow, from the Greek, and itis, inflammation, the Latin. So inflammation of the gray matter. And here's a quote from a 1959 textbook of medicine, a common acute viral disease. Look at that, common in 1959. In the U.S., is not, in many other countries, it's not common anymore. But it may be one day. Characterized clinically by a brief febrile illness with sore throat, headache, and vomiting, and often with stiffness of the neck and back. In many cases, a lower neuron paralysis develops in the early days of illness. So this is poliomyelitis, a paralytic disease. In the U.S., the first epidemics occurred around 1900, big one in 1916. You can see almost 30,000 cases in the U.S. that year. And then, various outbreaks every year. And then after World War II, a huge increase in the number of cases, over 50,000 a year, due to the baby boomers, right? My generation, who were born as the people from the military came back home and had families. And that was one of the impetus for having a vaccine. But the other was that FDR, shown here, had polio as a young man, and he could not walk without braces and crutches or a wheelchair. And he raised the money in the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis to develop the 2 vaccines that we use today. And at one point, hospitals were full of iron lungs because many of the patients lost their ability to breathe. This, of course, is poliovirus, a small icosahedral virus with a plus-stranded RNA genome. So the inactivated polio vaccine was developed by Jonas Salk here. It's poliovirus treated with formalin to destroy infectivity. In 1954, the National Foundation made a clinical trial of 1.8 million children, the biggest ever, huge. And it gave 50% protection against paralysis. And that was licensed the same day. Now, I don't know if you remember at the beginning of COVID, Peter Marks, or maybe it was the head of FDA, I don't remember who, said, if the COVID vaccines are 50% effective against disease, we will license them. And that was based on this precedent. Unfortunately, lots of great headlines here from many newspapers that are gone in New York. The Herald Tribune, the New York World Telegram. Oh my gosh. Anyway, weeks after the vaccine was released, many kids got paralyzed from it, hundreds. And that's because one of the companies involved in making the vaccine didn't inactivate it properly. And so after that was fixed, it didn't cause any more polio. But that started a lot of litigation. It started the big anti-vax movement that has spiraled to this day. So the virus is ingested by fecal oral contamination. It goes to the intestine where it reproduces, spreads to the blood, and in the intestine it's shed in the feces, and that's how it spreads to another person. Most infections end there. Only 1% does the virus enter the central nervous system and cause paralysis. So paralysis is really an accidental side effect of poliomyelitis. Inactivated vaccine produces antibodies that block the virus in the blood, so it doesn't block infection in the gut, and that prevents neuroinvasion of the virus. And we introduced IPV in 1955. It brought down the number of infections to a few thousand a year. We switched to an oral vaccine in the 60s, which we'll talk about next time. Our other vaccine for today is influenza virus inactivated vaccine. Influenza viruses, of course, envelope viruses with hemagglutinin and neuraminidase proteins in the envelope that are important for immunity, and 8 negative-stranded RNA segments. And there are 3 types. We vaccinate against A and B, but not against influenza C. Why do we vaccinate against flu? Well, there can be up to 50,000 deaths a year in the U.S., depending on the year, depending on the virus that is circulating. So it is a disease we must vaccinate against. And the vaccine has historically been grown in embryonated chicken eggs and then formalin inactivated or chemically treated to make them non-infectious. We make millions of doses a year, and it's about 60% effective at preventing disease in healthy children and adults less than 65. And the protection correlates with antibodies to the surface proteins. Now, of course, you can get influenza vaccines that are produced in cell culture and inactivated in a similar way. The problem with the influenza vaccines, of course, is that the envelope proteins, the HA and the NA, can change every year. And so we have to, in the first months of every year, select new strains for vaccine manufacture. And that's done with a WHO-led worldwide consortium. And once the strains are selected, reassortants are made with a high-yielding virus, influenza virus, that grows well in eggs. And so the recombinant the reassortant only has HA and NA from the circulating strain. And typically the vaccine these days contain representatives from H1N1, H3N2, and B Victoria lineages. So that's the influenza vaccine. Now, making the vaccine is a chore, as I say. It starts with year-round surveillance by the Global Influenza Surveillance Network. In January and February, they select the strains depending on what's circulating. They prepare the reassortants. They standardize the antigen, make sure it's potent, and package it up so you can start vaccinating in August. And then they start all over again the next year. And if you want to learn more about that, there's a TWIV 413 on it. Now, the problem, of course, is that the surface glycoproteins can change every year. This is called antigenic drift. And here's a model of the hemagglutinin, one of the surface proteins. And these colored areas are where antibodies can bind to the HA molecule and block infectivity. And a single amino acid in some of these sites can make it necessary to change the vaccine because the antibodies cannot neutralize those variants. And these variants arise randomly. They arise multiple times during the year. And we have to figure out which one to make the vaccine against. Okay, so those are a couple of inactivated virus vaccine. Next time, part 2, we will go through some of the other vaccine technologies that I showed you in that slide. All right. Let's go back to our questions in the last 20 minutes or so. Costa says, do you think there will be a point at which Bhattacharya and his cohort will say enough to RFK's claims? No, they will never do that because they'll get fired. They're not enough of good scientists to do that. Nope, I don't think they will. But boy, would I be surprised if they did. Back to the French. Vous appelez comment? Your name is what? You know, what is it? You call yourself what? Hochzeit is wedding. Okay. Spanless says, did you know that American billion is only a milliard to the French? I don't know why. New York Times makes $1 billion, a year, and is the most profitable newspaper. Very few people read it, though, Les. You have to admit. Dorothy is in Duluth, Minnesota in the 50s. 82F is 28C. That's right. If Novavax is in Canada, I'll go over the bridge. Right. Garth, that's observation, not RCT with respect to singles. Right. No, there's no clinical trial. It's observational. And they tried to reduce the confounding variables very well in those trials. Alberta likes the GOP. Never going to Alberta again. Nevitz says, that reminds me of the Monty Python episode of the Johann, etc. Long title. Elizabeth says, I think we should become a Canadian province. Then we'd all have health care. I think there's some problems with Canadian health care, though. It's not perfect, right? Yeah. Canada was about to elect the Maple MAGA before the whole 51st state thing. Good. Lee says his new Moderna's combo COVID and flu mRNA shot outperforms current vaccines in a large trial, would make it easier to get vaccinated against both. Hopefully Daniel will cover that. Scott says the universal health care is so hard that only 33 of 34 Western countries have managed to pull it off. Wait, that sounds pretty good. 33 of 34? Étoile is star. Sorry, yes, that's right. I forgot many words, of course. We really do need to worry about the autism list. This is unacceptable. You know, some of the comments about destroying families, which it may do, but it doesn't always. Very Nika, easy to ask where the toilet is in Russian, not easy to find one. It's great. David from Seattle, welcome. Yep. Biggest side effect of vaccines is adults. Michael gives us a little Spanish lesson. In Spanish, G is pronounced as an H when followed by a vowel. To pronounce G as in go, it must be followed by a U, and the vowel after that is what is pronounced. Agnostic is agnostico. G is never as in G. Okay. Too complicated, man. Yeah, so this is a good question. Who coined variolation? Let's look it up. No, who coined it? So it says Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, who was the wife of the British ambassador to Turkey. She introduced it widely in Europe, but I'm not sure she. Who coined variolation, the name? Jeez. Yeah, I'm not getting an answer. The term derives from the Latin word variola, meaning mark on the skin. Variola virus is smallpox virus. What's the origin of the word variolation? Okay, who did it? So I don't know. In this small search, here's one more article in a journal. Now everything says variolation was blah, blah, blah. Okay. We know in the 11th century, variolation killed more people than the virus would have killed. I think it's hard to know, but it's 30% lethal, which is about the same as infection. So I don't think they variolated as many people as got infected. So it's a small consolation, though. Remus said, I got smallpox vaccine to protect against Mpox. I was exposed and did not develop disease. That's great. It works. It works. Silvio Pina just got a response from Representative Laura Friedman to my email against RFK. Very good. Posted in the comments after the live chat, yeah. Why does inflammation create a better immune response? So, inflammation is a product of the first innate immune response that precedes the production of antibodies and T cells. And so the inflammation helps recruit a lot of the cells that are needed for an effective antibody and T cell response. If you don't have a good early response to infection, you have poor inflammation, and as you say, you have poor adaptive responses. So I think we don't know the answer to that entirely, but part of it is being able to recruit a lot of the cells that participate in the immune responses early on. This is a depressing mini lecture. Yeah, because it's all true, and what these guys are saying are the opposite of all of it. Yep. Yeah, inflammation is an immune response. That's right. Can infections like dengue cause damage that can be passed on in germline cells? No. So to be passed on in the germline cell, it has to infect the germline cell. And most virus infections don't do that, fortunately. Like HIV does not infect germline cells. Otherwise, it would be a disaster. Inflammation is a response to tissue damage, but it also is a product of activation of the innate response, right? The recognition of antigen as foreign and so forth. What is the science behind herd immunity? We should actually do a mini lecture on that, but briefly, the observation is that the higher fraction of the population that is immunized against a particular virus, the more the rest of the unimmunized population is protected. And the mechanism isn't clear because vaccines don't prevent transmission, but they may reduce the shedding of virus, and therefore it's harder for virus to travel in the community. And measles is a good example. If you immunize a fraction of the population, you don't see measles in people who are not immunized. Visto says Australia has free childhood vaccine schedule, compulsory to get free schooling. That's pretty compelling. You get free schooling, right? That's really good. Is cowpox still circulating? No, it is not. It's extinct. Extinct. Yeah, a lot of people would like to be vaccinated against COVID, and this is horrible. You need to write your representatives right away and senators as soon as this becomes reality, right? Or close to reality. Hydrogen peroxide is good for disinfecting surfaces. Yeah, so it is very good for preventing contamination. But no, don't drink it. No. Did anyone question RFK about COVID vax being the deadliest? I'm sure he was. I don't remember what he said. He probably said, "No, here's the paper that shows it." Very Nika said there's a cool Sci educator who is an epidemiologist, health nerd, Gid MK, Blue Sky, super interesting. Epidemiology is amazing. He often dissects bat studies. I learned a lot from him. To be honest, hunter-gatherers are the opposite of selfish. I don't think they are. The hunter-gatherers worked for their little tribe of 100 to 200 people and they didn't give a damn about the other tribes around them. So that's pretty selfish. Mm-hmm. It's a great part of the show. Can I clip it and use it without copyright? Yeah, just give credit. That's all. Scott writes that Medcram counseled NAC and quercetin to help with oxidative metabolic products. Doesn't prevent anything, but can help bolster metabolic function. Nothing more. Does not replace treatment. Thank you very much. Yeah, it doesn't replace treatment. H. Zoo says, I fear RFK Jr. is going to fabricate a bunch of data to link autism to vaccine and say vitamin supplements can prevent autism. If these get peer reviewed and published, that'd be really scary. I agree, Zoo. I think he's going to fabricate data associating some vaccines, probably MMR, with autism. It's going to be fake. It's going to be a horrible study because we've done over a dozen studies. There's no association in different countries. Scott remembers 2 Dallas doctors talking long form about prescribing ivermectin. Actual MDs, but not following any scientific reasoning. Zero reasoning for ivermectin. Doesn't work. Visto, though no vaccine to sterilize them, can some reduce transmission, but are not. It's hard to say that, Visto, because R0 is not just a virus thing, it's a population behavior thing. So who knows? In a sparsely populated area, the R0 can be very low. But just if you're just talking about the virus itself, no, I've never seen evidence for that. No. Yeah, RFK will find evidence linking autism to vaccines, sadly. Yeah. Yes, the March of Dimes was the fundraising arm of the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis. Yeah, or not below 1, right? Yeah, during COVID, where people needed a lot of intubation, they longed for iron lungs because they're more gentle than sticking a tube down your chest, but they don't exist anymore. No. Yeah, Paul Offer wrote a great book on the Cutter incident. Really, really, I have it right here. Excellent book. I highly recommend it. If you want something, somebody's asking for something to read next, read that. It's really good. Noir says, having been raised by a general surgeon and a registered nurse, I cannot conceive of thinking vaccination is simply a personal choice. Lordy. It's right. It's right. I haven't talked about clinical trials, Leo. I don't know what changes are going to be made because they think they need fixing, but I don't know what it is. I haven't heard yet. Which TWIV talks about the influenza vaccine. So many do. I can't point to you to a specific one, but many TWIVs do. Can you explain how the mRNA in the vaccines is released in the LNP? I believe it's endocytosed, and then it could be that the those endosomes fuse with lysosomes, and then all the low pH and the enzymes digest away the membrane. Yeah. John, thank you for your support of science communication. We really need it. Variolation killed 2%, smallpox 20 to 30%. Where'd you get that number? Because I had variolation as 20 to 30% like smallpox, because it's essentially infectious virus, right? I heard the Chinese heat dry the smallpox scabs. That could inactivate or weakening it in some way. Yeah, probably inactivated it a lot. Yeah. Scary times ahead. You made me feel better with office hours. Okay. Let's see. Anybody else to thank here? Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to talk about Vinay Prasad. Yeah, he's going to be the head of vaccines and other things, replacing Peter Marks. And we don't have time to go over, but I'll put it on the agenda for next week. Yeah, sorry about that. You have great questions, Anyway, I want to thank our moderators for joining us tonight. We had Les tonight. We had Barb Mack UK. We had Steph from San Francisco, and we had Vanity Nutrition. Thank you so much for moderating, and thanks to all of you for coming. There's some space between the people here and the number of thumbs up, so As I'm wrapping up, can you hit the thumbs up button? Scott, thank you for your support of science communication. It's really needed. We will be back next Wednesday. What's the date? Let me mark my calendar with office hours, and I will go over the articles that I failed to do today. That's Wednesday, May 19th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Great discussion. Great questions. We learned a little foreign languages tonight. And in the meantime, until next week, please be safe. Good night, everybody, and thank you.